Hello everyone, and welcome to an update on the GTX 260 overclocking competition. I am currently on the HwBot homepage, and if I go to competitions here, you will now see this. So, I was contacted by a league from HwBot, and he has added our competition, which has now been officially renamed to the GTX 260 OC Challenge, to HwBot. As you can see, there's three different competitions, so to say. They're like, we did it as three different comps because the HwBot system would have made an overall winner otherwise, but we wanted a winner for each stage. So instead of having one comp with three stages, we have three different comps, which will each have one main winner instead of just one winner for all three stages. But yeah, so the rules mostly stay the same. There are some slight changes, and we'll go through that. The main thing that changes is that, of course, it's on HwBot now, which means that we don't have to bother with any of that Discord stuff that I thought was gonna mess things up. So in order to post your scores, you can just do it through HwBot. You make yourself an account on this website, and then you can submit your score. Once the competition's open, I'll also do a small video showing exactly how you do that. So if you don't know where all the buttons are and like what you have to press, I will make a little guide about that once the competition is live. As you can see, it opens on the 16th of December. That is this week, Friday. Now, the live stream that I was talking about will be a little bit later than that. But you know, it opens on Friday. Until then, there might be some slight changes to the rules, some slight updates. So once it starts, I'll make another video if anything changes. But as it stands right now, the competition is now hosted on HwBot, which means that it has just gotten a lot more legit and a lot easier to pull off. And we'll probably also have a lot more people taking part now because not many people watch my channel, but a lot of people use HwBot. And three new competitions just popping up. Probably will get some attention. So I think we will have a lot more people being a part of it now, which is really cool. So let's go through the three different stages. So as before, we will have an air, a water, and a sub-zero stage. The air stage is, well, only on air cooling. You are allowed to use custom air coolers and you are allowed to like swap your fans or whatever as long as the cooling remains on air and you don't like abuse the rules too much, because technically you could just go into really, really cold ambient air and it would still be air cooling. We kind of want to put a stop to that. And so the general rule is like remain at a reasonable ambient temperature. And in actual numbers, that's like your ambient should be at 15 degrees or higher. So don't go below like 14, don't go below 15 degrees Celsius. Because that's about like the minimum that like a room can reasonably get to. I think I've had 16 degrees in my flat before, and I have a pretty big window wall, so it doesn't hold heat as well. So I think if it really has to become to specifics, 15 degrees is your floor level for air cooling. For water cooling, well, we obviously allow water cooling, and there's also a bit of a restriction there. We're gonna say no to water chillers or anything that like does below ambient. There's one exception. If you want to run a bucket filled with ice and like put your radiator in that, we're gonna allow that just because it's a very accessible thing. A lot of people can do that. Like people who have a cheap water cooling loop, they can just throw their radiator into a bit of ice water or just like put the tubes in. That is easy to do because, again, the competition is mainly meant for getting in new people, and not many of those are going to have water cooling loops, but some of them might. or some of them might just decide to spend a little bit to get a water cooling loop, because you can get them really cheap. You can get AliExpress water cooling hardware. I myself use it on my test bench. My blocks, tubes, fittings, and even radiators are all from AliExpress. The only non-AliExpress part I use is my pump. So like you can get a water cooling loop for really cheap, like for under 100 euros very easily, possibly even under 60 euros if you only get one block. So if some people decide to get that, we are going to allow an ice bucket, but like not anything more. The ice bucket is very much the end. So if you do a water chiller that can like get you to a very steady like 4 degrees water temperature or something, then that's really kind of pushing it. And I don't think we're really gonna allow that, because yeah, that it is a potential point that might change in the future. But I think if you have a very cold temperature setup, it kind of really, even though it's technically not Sub-Zero, I think it really more belongs into the Sub-Zero category. Because water chillers do get a bit colder than just an ice bucket. So yeah, it is a thing that's potentially subject to change. Maybe we will allow water chillers, but as it stands right now, the water stage is really just meant to be normal water cooling. And maybe if someone wants to push a little bit more, they can use a bucket with some ice cubes in it. And that's pretty much it. And then Sub-Zero is just everything allowed. Like you can use a full-on water chiller, you can use a phase change cooler, you can use dry ice, LN2, whatever you have, whatever you want to. So the Sub-Zero stage, just everything's allowed. And yeah, and speaking of everything's allowed, all stages now have PCB modifications, BIOS modifications, whatever you want to do to the card, everything is allowed. The only restriction is the cooling for the different stages. You can do whatever you want to your car. You can e-power it, you can put cap mods on it, you can volt mod it, you can whatever you want to think of. It is allowed in all of the stages now. And if we go into one of the stages, there are some more specific rules. So we have Unigine Tropics added to HwBot. So we didn't have to change the benchmark. It is part of HwBot now as a beta benchmark. And here are the rules. So because Unigine Tropics doesn't have a preset like Heaven and Valley do, we have this. There's a link to a little image. And these are the benchmark settings that we're using. So you're supposed to use this and no other settings. So this is just the settings that you have to put in. It is basically default settings, except you have to set this to 16, this to 8, disable full screen, and set 720p. We're doing it windowed and 720p because if you look at the verification screenshot that was provided as a sample, you can see how the final score is displayed inside of the benchmark, and if it was in full screen, well, you couldn't show GPU-Z and CPU-Z, which is kind of important. That's why it's windowed. Here's a download link to the benchmark just on the Unigine website. It is a free benchmark. It is a very, very small benchmark too. Kind of old, but so is the GTX 260, so it is a very appropriate benchmark. If you look at this, it gets about 60 FPS, which is honestly kind of perfect. Then, the graphics card is, of course, the GTX 260. Now, right here it states that both the 216 SP and the 192 SP are allowed. So there are two different versions of the GTX 260. One has 216 cores, the other has 192 cores. The 216 core card should be a lot more popular, like most of the cards should be 216 cores. Really, the only 192 core cards that I've seen were usually like OEM cards that were like unbranded and had a smaller cooler than the other cards. You are technically allowed to use those 192 core cards, but well, as the name says, they have less cores. They only have 192 shader processors or stream processors or whatever it's called. The 216 core cards will just get a better score. That's just how it is. So if you can get a 216, you can technically use a 192, but the 216 will just be better because it has more cores. Doesn't mean if you get a really good 192, you can still probably get good scores because memory is actually quite important on these. But you really are meant to use a 216 core card. The 192 is only allowed as like a formality because it's not always marked what kind of core the card has. Someone might be buying one thinking it's a 216 and then it shows up as a 192 and then they don't want to buy another one, so they just keep the 192. Like, that person can still sub, but you really are meant to use the 216 core card. Then we do allow engineering sample hardware. That's basically just for one person. You know who you are, because he wants to run some engineering sample motherboards, and HwBot usually doesn't allow engineering sample hardware in competitions. He specifically asked that we allow this, so we allow it. If anybody else wants to run engineering sample hardware, then you can. Yeah. Then here's a slight change to the rules. So, on the screenshot that I've shown right here, previously we only required that you post the CPU tab of CPU-Z, the memory tab of CPU-Z, and the main tab of GPU-Z. The mainboard tab of CPU-Z was optional, and the sensors tab of GPU-Z was also optional. The sensors tab is no longer optional, it is now mandatory. The mainboard tab is still optional, you don't have to include it, but the sensors tab is now mandatory. Basically, so that we can read your GPU temperature, because like the difference between air and water cooling is not gonna be that big. So someone could potentially be trying a water-cooled card and sub it for air cooling, because it's not that big of a difference. You see, like, this screenshot is from a card that was air-cooled, and it was only at 53 degrees. So there's not that big of a jump from air to water cooling. We still have the two different stages because it is a beginner-friendly competition, and most people will probably stay on whatever cooler their card comes with. That's why we kind of have it as two, because water cooling will be better. Like, it will just be better than air cooling, but not by a huge amount. So someone could potentially be trying to cheat in a water-cooled card into the air comp, and we don't want that. That is why we want to see the specific GPU temperature. And of course, you can also see the other sensors, like, for example, your GPU voltage, if you ever wonder what someone's running. Though that doesn't display the voltage when you volt mod the card, to be fair. But if you're benching versus someone who has a non-modded card, you can also see their voltage and exact clocks and whatever else. So that is one change to the rules. You need to have the sensors tab on your screenshot now. Then it also requires you to attach an image of your overclocking rig, basically also so that that we can verify that you're using the correct cooling solution for the stage that you're subbing. You just add that picture when you post your score. You can add up to 4 pictures next to your verification screenshot on HwBot. Just add at least one image of your test bench and you'll be fine. And of course it says that people can ask me for more info. And I'll probably refer them to this video that I'm recording right now, because it is meant to explain the things. And yeah, that's basically the rules. So it starts in 3 days. We just went over everything, and I am really, really thankful that we have gotten this opportunity. I was kind of daydreaming about this, about this maybe being a possibility, but now it has become a possibility. We are on HwBot, which is really cool. So huge thanks to HwBot for hosting this for us, for like just doing this. We didn't even specifically ask for it. I was just contacted and then just like, hey, do you want this on HwBot? Sure. So yeah, huge thanks to HwBot for hosting this. You guys are making this so much easier for us. This was going to be awful. Like the main argument against Unigine Tropics was actually it's not on HwBot and we're gonna have to keep track of our own scores, but now it is on HwBot, so yeah. And that would be basically everything I wanted to say. There is one last thing for the people that stuck around, a little treat. Most competitions on HwBot have a dedicated wallpaper to them. Mostly to just, set it a bit apart and also to make sure that the scores that people upload were specifically made for the competition and not like taken from somewhere on the internet or like our old scores from some time. And we also have our own wallpaper, which isn't in the rules yet because I just submitted it. So it'll be added over the next while until it starts on Friday. And here is the wallpaper. I made this myself. I hope you like it. And yeah, so that's gonna be the wallpaper. We put a reference GTX 260 there that I actually drew by myself by hand on my tablet, and a little bit of a tropic theme because we are doing Unigine Tropics. And yeah, I couldn't help myself but to put my logo in there, and also the Jacked.RGB Sync logo because the guys from that Discord is really how it started, so I guess they deserve to be on this. And of course HwBot is on it because we are hosting it via HwBot, and I'm again hugely thankful for having this opportunity. And yeah, so that's the competition wallpaper. I hope you like it. And that really will be it. So we are on HwBot. This is so cool. Like I'm like a little child on Christmas right now, even though Christmas is only in 12 days. Anyway, so yeah, but basically all the problems that this competition might have encountered just got solved. So I'll see you there on Friday. Go get your cards ready because stuff is about to go down. And I will let you know when I do my live stream. It'll be sometime next week, I think. I'll let you know at least one day before. And I hope a lot of people will be taking part in this. So until then, goodbye.